Thanks so much for joining us today on this advocacy workshop on making progress on climate education in higher education. So we got some really exciting speakers lined up for today. And just say a little bit more about the background of this project and what we're going to do today before we hear the speakers. So yeah, we have youth from 6 different countries around the world sharing about how the situation is regarding climate education in their countries, what they want their governments to be doing more of. And then we'll have a bit more of an interactive part of the session, focusing on how university ranking or league tables can include climate education more as part of their criteria. This workshop is part of the Youth in Education project funded by the United Nations Environment Programme. And the aim is to convene students to work with policymakers to include climate education in the curricula of higher education institutions. And so this project is now coming to an end with, this is like the last activity part of this project, where we convene different partner organizations, developed a manifesto really consolidating the asks of students, highlighting youth voices through video, and doing advocacy workshops like this and some community calls. Now this, you can find out more about this on our website, sws.earth/youth-and-education. And this will also be continuing in the form of a community of everybody who's involved in climate education, continue networking. Say a bit more about that at the end of the call. Just to frame a little bit what our speakers will be referring to, we have developed this manifesto for climate education over the last months. And this is just a short summary. I'll post in the chat also the link to the document that you can sign, and please also use it in your own advocacy efforts, getting decision makers to sign it and commit to acting on it. So it's really about having governments, higher education, decision makers, building networks across ministries, empowering educators to teach climate education, integrating climate education across curricula in all disciplines, decolonizing the curriculum, so really challenging also the power structures and that are still part of what is being taught, and decarbonizing buildings, reducing emissions. That also shapes the informal curricula, the implicit values through the learning environment. And of course, empowering students to really lead on addressing the climate emergency during their curricula, but also their extracurricular engagement. So we have 6 speakers lined up, and they'll just be introducing themselves as they speak, and I'll share the link where you can find the bio, a short description of each of the speakers, as well as the notes that we're going to be taking from this. So I guess we can get started with the presentation. And I would like to give it to Kelo to get us started. Kelo, are you ready?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Kelo, and I'm joining from Nigeria, and I'm the founder and lead strategist of Great Blue Movement. Sorry for my voice, I've been down with fever. Let me try and share my screen. My presentation will be quick, and then I'll hand over to my.
And if you have any questions while Kelo's presenting, please post it in the chat. Kelo, you have 7 minutes in total.
Okay.
You can share your screen. Get started when you're ready.
Yeah. Sorry. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So hello everyone. I just wanted to give a brief overview of some of the works we've been doing around climate education, particularly my alma mater, which is the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. So the first thing, first major what we tried to do was around sustainability in higher education literature. So we discovered that a majority, even though climate education, climate literacy is being relegated to the back in education higher institutions, but some staffs, some members, some faculty members have been working on reading research around sustainability, but are failing to, meaningfully communicate this their works, their research and findings to students. So most times they do research, they come up with amazing work for just mostly for publications, and they fail to find meaningful ways to imbibe this with the courses they're teaching in classes. And so we wanted to try to bridge the gap, between the work faculty members are doing, in terms of some of their research in climate change and sustainability and broader related topics, and see how they can meaningfully not just work with students in some of their research, but also to meaningfully collaborate across sector. And we started this at the University of Nigeria, so to try to get more faculty members and students to work together in some of their research projects. One major benefit of this is that even though even though due to the course curriculum, some key climate literacy have been missed out, but by students actively, working with faculty members, to try to, in some of their research areas, you find out that students in terms, get, more enlightened, get to learn more, and also to promote the student staff collaboration, in this around topic, especially around sustainability, and its intersectionalities. Another major thing we worked on was to see climate change studies as a general studies. So the University of Nigeria and universities across Nigeria, in first, second year, you have some general courses like use of English, like philosophy. So these are courses everybody, regardless of your discipline, takes as a general course. So we've been working a whole lot with the university administrations to try to see how climate change studies will become, a separate GS course. We made considerable progress for not having climate change 101 as a general course, but around getting climate change topic imbibed, in some of the general courses. And a whole lot of work is still currently being done in trying to see how this can be climate change studies can be a general subject, in the, irrespective of the discipline. And yeah, so and then I like to propose, the three key tasks I think universities need to meet, because universities is actually a breeding ground. It decides universities to a right extent decide the quality of young professionals who we are pushing out into the to the labor market, and have the key tasks, of identifying what what each national carbon reduction commitment is, and the contribution of universities to do that. So one of those tasks is awareness, knowledge, and connectedness. I will talk more on awareness. So universities should be able, to meaningfully, cultivate ecological awareness, in students. And this means that students who pass through the university should be able to have, a real sense of the risk and implications to the environment, of our everyday life. So we need to be aware, of, our everyday actions. What is the implication? What is the implication to, to the human resources, and how do, the biosphere enables and meet our growth, as a society, and this have, potential of a huge potential of affecting even our consumption patterns, our values, our career choices, and perspective in almost any issue. So universities should actively try to, build this awareness, in students. The second is the knowledge. So irrespective of the course you studied, irrespective of the program you studied, So I've said it before that climate change is not a science or climate science problem. It's an engineering problem. It's an economic problem. So it's an all-round problem. So regardless of the course or your discipline, your study, your degree should be able to build. You should be able to gain knowledge of environmental issues, but not just that. Understanding the nature of the ecosystems, the climate, the environmental degradation, but also knowing, and evaluating different ways to effectively and practically, contribute to being a solutionary, to contributing to solutions. So it doesn't matter if you're an economist, you should be able to know from an economist point of view, how do you help the transition to net zero? It doesn't matter if you're an engineer or if you studied law. So no matter what you studied at school, your degree should be able to allow you build the knowledge, and capacity to meaningfully contribute to the solution, around this. And the last topic is, connectedness. How, once you pass through the universities, I believe that one very important, also one very important thing is connectedness. How have your studies helped you build the sense of positive, emotional, and embodied sense of being part of nature, being capable of, enjoying the natural beauty, and learning your connection with nature, but also how the biosphere, between which the human society thrives. Understanding this sense of connection is very, very important if we are to meaningfully drive net zero. So I think, okay, I think my time is very up. So I'll hand over to the next speakers to try to bring on some very similar and amazing perspective. Thank you all.
Great, thank you so much, Kelo, for your presentation and all the great work you're doing. So yeah, I would like to hand it over to Christine Berry now from California. And here with us, Christine.
Yes, hi, let me share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi, I'm Kristen. I'm going to be a rising junior at UCLA in the fall. And I am a part of Global Climate Pledge, which has university climate ambassadors from around the country. And so we meet pretty much every week, and we have different working groups based on different issues that we're passionate about. And so I'm in the curriculum working group. So basically how we're trying to implement climate change and sustainability related curriculum into higher education. And this kind of fits in with the manifesto because we want to integrate like the climate curriculum and language through all disciplines and all majors, not just those who are most passionate about it, but everyone should get the opportunity to learn about it and to empower students to lead on addressing this emergency. So the next generation of leaders from the students we have now. And so, let me see. Oh. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to get to the next slide here. I don't know if my computer's working. Okay, so we have the Executive Board Special Committee on the Climate Change Crisis, which is a new UC initiative. And so this special committee is going to be a working committee the next coming school year. And it's basically a working group that's going to develop recommendations for climate related changes to campus policy and practice, and also promote efforts to increase the campus response to the climate crisis in the curriculum and research, which is crucial for everyone in learning and understanding about climate related curricula. So our initiative right now is to implement a general education requirement. And so for anyone that doesn't know, a general education requirement is a class or discipline you have to take before you graduate. And so our goal is to present this idea to the academic senate that we want to have a climate change and sustainability related general education requirement, so all students can gain the basic understanding of climate change and sustainability before they graduate. And so that also may look like changing the content of existing courses at UCLA to include topics related to climate change that can fulfill dual purpose courses. So for example, a general education requirement at UCLA is a diversity requirement. So coupling this with a climate change requirement, we could have a class on environmental racism that fulfills both the diversity requirement and climate change requirement.
Sorry, Kristen, did you want to share your screen or something? Because we're not seeing your slides right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you see that?
It's coming up.
Perfect.
Yes, we can see it.
So I can just quickly review what I said, but basically this is a general education requirement that encompasses climate change and sustainability related curriculum applicable to a wide variety of majors and subjects. So all students would have to take this general education requirement before they graduate to gain a basic understanding of climate change and sustainability related topics, but it'll relate to every major, every discipline, every subject. So they can choose a class that best relates to their content. And then, sorry, I don't know why my screen sharing is not working. Let me do the next one. Okay, so we actually, one of my colleagues is a ambassador at Dickinson College. And so I kind of created this little timeline to outline the steps that they took at their college. And so they started the Center for Sustainability Education in the early 2000s. They got a grant, built the offices, and laid out the foundation for what they wanted to accomplish. And then they incorporated a graduation requirement. And so they did this in two different ways: Sustainability Connections, which was more of a broad overview of climate change and sustainability, and then Sustainability Investigations. So those are for students that want to take a deeper dive into case studies and more specific research pertaining to climate change. And now they have future goals, which are to support social justice, including anti-racism efforts, and take intersectional approaches to climate change. And then they also want to connect with external organizations and councils. Next one. And then for other significant outcomes, the University of Washington is they actually conducted research on sustainability course implementation. So basically, they took a list of documents and research on programs and classes at the school and the degree to which sustainability information is provided in each of these majors. And so I think this is a crucial step for colleges and universities to engage with the different majors and disciplines, and mapping out exactly how much climate change and sustainability related information is in each of these majors before looking to the next steps on how to incorporate more. So seeing what you already have. And then also at Stanford, they have a new School of Sustainability. And so they're basically offering courses and degrees in the environment and sustainability. And they're also working with a student advisory council on student leadership for how to best implement their new sustainability and climate change related school.
All right, Christine, I think your time is up. Do you still have any last things
Yeah,
you want to say?
that was basically it. But I think just in terms of for students and faculty, advisors, anyone passionate about this issue, I think the next steps are creating working groups, people that are equally as passionate, getting students involved, faculty involved, and generating support for this on multiple fronts. And that's how I have found the best success in order to push this idea forward. But thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Kristen. Really good stuff. Now, maybe we can all just take a breath after all that information. Digest a little bit, and then I would like to pass on the floor to Shreya from Nepal. Welcome, Shreya.
So should I begin, or are we
Yes,
pausing
you're
for
ready.
some minute?
No, you're ready to go. You can share your
Go.
screen.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can maybe, yeah, full screen. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Shreya. Thank you team and SOS International for inviting me to share the progress on climate education in higher education in Nepal. It is undeniable that the young people of today will face the impacts of climate crisis more than any other generation. That is why it is imperative that the young people of today should be equipped with the understanding of the climate crisis and other environmental crises happening at a young age. I'm a student of environment science, but when I try to have a conversation with my friends who studies law, business, politics, social science, they get turned off because they believe that climate change is just something that the students of environment science should be concerned about. So it is a high time that we need to realize and recognize that the current education system is giving a dangerous message to the young people that climate change is something that only students of environment science should be concerned about. I mean, everyone will be directly and indirectly impacted by climate change. So everyone should have the knowledge of climate crisis, and it should not be some kind of privilege. And coming from Nepal, there are different courses that at least includes climate change and sustainability environment in some way. So the major one is environment science, which I studied in my bachelor's, environment science and environment management. It basically includes most of the thing about climate change, from biodiversity to conservation aspects to what kinds of crises the world is facing now and what kind of actions we are taking. It's not complete, but it covers at least most aspects of the dimensions of climate change. And also there I studied subject like agriculture science, natural resource management, and forestry. That also covers climate change in different ways, be it like sustainable forest management practice system, or like the way climate change is affecting agriculture, forestry, biodiversity. So they also get to learn at least something about climate change. And then there are other few topics such as rural development, engineering, and development studies, where students can learn about climate change. They get to learn like a little on the course, but during their field work and practical visits, they learn more about the impacts of climate change in the ground, and mainly what kind of impact it is bringing to their fields of study. So there are not much a subject that covers climate change in our higher education course. A study of University Grants Commission. So it's that almost 65% of the students studies management and education, where there is nothing about climate change, sustainability, anything. And at least 15% of the students who studies science and technology and also engineering, they are able to learn about climate change. So basically 65% of the student do not get to learn anything about climate change in their higher education, whereas about 15% gets to know at least something about climate change. And a study done by UNICEF in 2021 December showed that though 82% of the Nepali respondents said that they very often learn about climate change in school, but when they were asked to explain about climate change, they could not. So just 34% of the respondents Nepali respondents were able to explain what climate change really is. So it may be due to the contrast in the quality of the education system, which may also affect the confidence of youths and their capacity to understand climate change. So we should also consider on like what kind of quality education are we delivering part. And 5% of the Nepali respondents said they never learn climate change in their school. And here also, the study shows that almost 50% of the students said that they learn about climate change in their science subject. So climate change is mainly just integrated with science. And I have witnessed some progress in recent years in higher education system in Nepal. So the history of higher education system in Nepal is not that long. It progressed rapidly from 1950s when democracy entered in our country, and the courses of climate change, the subject curriculum has been revised in every few years. And if we compare the old and the previous curriculum, in the new curriculum there is a bit new addition of climate change and its related impact in the course. And also, while preparing the curriculum, the government has started to do stakeholder discussion and also expert level consultation with people from different fields to understand their knowledge, to understand their experiences working in this field, which I believe is a good step to go forward on. And not just in climate aspect, but also overall, the universities now are starting to consider teachers' experience and knowledge about the subject matter. So it's because even if the subject is on the curriculum, if the teacher is not able to explain them properly to the students, that will not make sense. Therefore, the universities are also considering teachers' experience and also the breadth of knowledge they hold in this area. And in different subjects such as science and engineering, if we see the curriculum design, it is trying to translate the theoretical knowledge that is in the book to the practical skills on how what actions can we take in home, how can we work with the government, how can we pressurize the leaders to act. So there are those aspects as well. And our education system is mainly focused on like it's a as exam focused education system. Even like for example, I studied environment science, and in my 4th year I had to study climate change as a major subject. And during my time there was like nothing practical focus. They were just about mask. For example, if I bring 45 marks out of 50, then I'm a good student. So it was just focused mainly on exam and marks. But now it is trying to move ahead from exam focused education system by including different kinds of trainings and skill kind of workshop. And in few of the studies, such as Masters in Environment Science, Masters in Engineering, they have also included a new aspect, that is doing an internship in a climate or environmental organization, where the student would be able to learn about what kind of work that organization is doing and what kind of impact different people from different parts of Nepal are facing. Yeah, and there has also been research going on conducted in this climate subject field on how to better integrate climate change in different aspects of education system. And yeah, there have also been field works to study about climate change, about environment and biodiversity of that area, which also connects the student about with the local context of their area. And slowly still, there is a wide belief that climate change should be just a concern of environment science students, because it is us who reads about this in our topic. But slowly, the topic of climate change is also being integrated in diverse topics such as beyond environment, such as engineering and development science, which is also a good step. And before going to the recommendations part, I think it would be good to know of the challenges that we will face in incorporating climate education in higher education system in Nepal. So there are lots of background challenges for us, such as though the number of higher education institutions are increasing, the quality of the education system seems to be declining, and there is a huge political interference in the universities, in the way the curriculum is designed, and also in the way the students are taught in the universities. So it's also one of the challenges, and among it are weak governance and ineffective management. also there is lack of understanding or sensitivity about climate change and environmental issues with the policymakers who make such kind of policies in environment sector. Also, we will face a challenge in financial part because we have to expand infrastructures and also to improve the quality of higher education to add new areas of climate change in our curriculum. There will be problems of finance as well. And also there are policy level barriers, top to bottom approach system. For example, the National Curriculum Center is the one who is responsible to design the climate change, to design the whole curriculum. So it's a top to bottom approach, and because of that, the students, the universities at the different local levels of Nepal may not own those issues. Also, there seems to be disconnection between the research and need. And yeah, and in 2019, we did a campaign on youth hacks and climate action policy, where we directly consulted with 1,000 young people from different parts of Nepal, not just in urban areas, but also we reached out to youths from rural areas, from marginalized and vulnerable areas. And we collected their feedbacks and submitted the youth acts to the Ministry of Forest and Environment, which is the main ministry that works in climate change in Nepal. And we also asked about including climate change as a mandatory subject in different curriculums and also in the courses of higher education of different courses. So which was warmly taken by the government. And now the climate action policy of Nepal, prepared in 2020, also at least focuses some aspects on climate education part. And yeah, moving forward to the recommendations, I believe, especially to the policymakers, to the government people who has been working in this field, I believe climate change and sustainability should be embedded like a golden thread to all of the curriculums from early age education system to higher education system. Also, there should be training on green jobs and skills inside the curriculum to equip young people to work in these issues. Also, there seems a big gap between the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology and the Ministry of Forest and Climate Change. So if there is a good coordination between those two ministries who works on education and climate change, I think that would also be a good way to address the challenges that we face. And at the end of the day, it is upon us, like upon young people who and what they want to learn from their curriculum. So it would be a good idea to listen to young people, to conduct consultations with young people from studying different fields of subject, and to know what they really want to have in their education system, rather than just imposing things in the curriculum. And as I said before, even if the subject of climate change is included in the curriculum, if the teachers are not well capacitated to properly explain those things to students, it would be challenging. Therefore, there should also be capacity building sessions for teachers, and the educational resources should be created for that. And as we will face finance issues and all also, there should be a separate specific budget, government entity and manpower who will work to integrate climate change in all forms of education. The government bodies should also be sensitized about the importance of climate change, why it is important to embed sustainability in our courses and all. And there has been lots of regional and international educational events that has been going on. So if the people who has been working in this field could also follow those discourse and conversations, I think it would also be good to know more about good practices and to learn about what is happening in different parts of the world. Lastly, the education systems would be connected with the cultures and belief of local and indigenous people, so that people will feel connected, and it will also develop empathy. And local translations and accessible that are accessible to everyone should also be considered. And these recommendations should not just be considered for like formal kind of education system, but it should be well noted for also informal education systems and all. So yeah, I think that is it. Thank you for your time. If you have any confusions, please let me know. I'll pass to Mohab, I think.
No, I would like to thank you so much, Shreya. I would like to pass the word next to Doye, because she just said that she won't be able to join probably for the rest of the call. So yeah, Doye, you're free to go next.
Let me just share my screen here.
Doya is calling in from Zambia.
Yes.
I hope we can see your face
Hi,
as well, if the
everyone.
connection is strong enough for the video.
Yes, I'm trying to connect the screen to share the screen right now. Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
In the meanwhile, maybe everybody can just take a breath, or maybe see what was meaningful or insightful from what you heard so far. Maybe just take a note of any actions you want to take as follow-up. Yes, we can see your screen now.
Are you able to see?
Yes, you can still make it full screen.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, but you still make it full screen. Yes, thank you.
Is it okay?
Perfect.
All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
All right. With the information that we have been given at hand, research has shown that climate change is a global emergency. And from experience, though people are attending university and are in position of leadership, it's discovered that the leadership gap is undermining the world's effort to curb global warming. And this implies that we need to scale up the initiatives and ensure that everyone is aware of the climate change and its impact, so that we respond to this global emergency. And as a country in Zambia, with regards to the key asks that have been prescribed in the manifesto, we see light in our country, Zambia, in the sense that the ministry called Green Economy, the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, has been established just recently. And its main purpose is to collaborate and spearhead the formulation of pathways and mechanisms in which solid waste management can be handled. And also much attention is being given to management of climate with its consequential global related cases such as loss of biodiversity, deforestation, desertification, and other environmental issues that may assault and degrade our ecosystem. In this sense, sorry, battery.
It seems like her battery might have died. Are you still with us, Doya? I think she left us. That is a real pity. Yeah, I hope we can still get to hear from her at another time. Maybe we'll share a recording or at least the slides afterwards. She's not able to join us later today. Then, yeah, I would like to invite Mohab to come on next. Mohab, are you ready?
Yeah, just a second.
And also just put the link to the manifesto for climate education in
Can
the chat.
you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mohab. and I'm actually not a university student yet, but I'd like to give some perspectives on things that's happened in Egypt and how to improve what's currently happening in Egypt, especially that what happened this year is actually a phenomenon, I could say, in the Egyptian movement. Because on the lead up to COP27, everything changed in terms of sustainability. So let's get started on that. Sorry. Okay. So a major update this year happened. For the first time, youth from across different universities were welcomed into giving their sustainability inputs in terms of many entrepreneurships. For example, I could say Greenish is an initiative in Egypt, established something called the Greenish Clubs. And we made, for the first time, a festival, or this initiative made a festival on promoting green ideas. And to say it's the first time to have such a collaboration between youth and education boards together to transform climate education. Now UNICEF as well is currently engaging in terms of climate education, but this is not enough because it only engaged in terms of waste management initiatives, and just at the starting point of it, there's still a long road to go. So my recommendation, first thing that we as organizers of local of Egypt, we recommend that we hold decision makers accountable by providing opportunities to speak up, especially green thinkers in Egypt, because they previously were not given enough standing points in terms of climate action generally, not just climate education, but climate action generally in Egypt was not something that's always ongoing. It's just ongoing this year because it's at the peak of its momentum and on the lead up to COP27. So when we organized local COI, for example, in Egypt in 2019, we had the people from Cairo come to grasp their initiatives. In 2021. We actually got people from all the governorates, and this year we're planning to have more governorates into it. So we need to hold decision makers accountable in terms of giving the opportunity to use to lead the decision making process. So what I can envisage in terms of higher education and government's responsibility and some of the key challenges is to build a generation responsible of sustainability. For example, not all governorates in Egypt have accessibility to fine education even. And most universities are supported by, for example, let's say fossil fuel industry. So we need to make sure that there is the investment in there. The thing is, what we face with divestment here is finance. There's not enough investments even in many governorate universities, and this is something initiatives such as ACTS started working on to get finance to the correct universities. So my key topic today is promotion of the idea of green campuses. So basically the idea is having green areas in campuses to give the idea to the people that the plant is not something only to consume or take their resources. It's something to as well preserve, protect, and connect with. For example, as you can see here, connecting with nature plus education, sustainable development goals. But recently, what we see as development is only for, let's say, benefiting on profit, not connecting with nature and preserving of it. And for example, in Egypt, the idea is to build new bridges and build new roads. I think this is okay, but we had massive deforestation in front of universities, in front of neighborhoods in Egypt. So connecting through green campuses is a brilliant idea. So I hope that this gets carried to the next generation and they can actually curb the disasters in terms of the removal of nature, in terms of in the school, I mean in the university education, and the university education level, we need to make sure that all these subjects they keep people in sustainability. For example, in economics in Egypt, we talk about oil a lot, especially with the current inflation. We're facing millions of debts in terms of the currency, and we're suffering from high inflation rates. Why not change it to think sustainably and focus on divestment? So yeah, it's kind of a very complicated situation right now in Egypt, especially with a high inflation cost happening. So it's I see this as a chance to divest universities, plus invest in more sustainable ideas. Just yes. So what happened in Egypt? The UNICEF suggested that we get teachers enrolling in universities and in schools to develop student skills and this criteria. So this is a great initiative made by the Ministry of Youth and the Ministry of Planning. But still, it's a long way to go, since previously we had little to none climate education in Egypt. Connecting heritage was UNESCO and all the fellows to educate people in universities about sustainability is crucial. I cannot stress enough, but what we're learning in Egypt in universities, even especially in economics and engineering, is not enough of a sustainable thinking. It's more of how to gain small profits and large profits in short time. So there's still a long way to go, and this is definitely a starting point. So yeah, I'm like, sorry, my presentation was a bit of a rush, but as I said, I'm still progressing to go to university next year. So I hope to see such change happening through divestment, through finance, and through adaptation as well. Thank you, and happy to receive any questions.
Right. Thanks so much, Mohab. Yeah, so we have one more speaker from Brazil. She's not with us live today, but we have a recording. So I'm just gonna share my screen and so we can hear her speak a little bit about the situation in Brazil. 1 second. Oops. Okay, here we go.
Hi, my name is Livia Pinazzo. I'm 20 years old and I'm from Brazil. Today, I'm a medical student on the University of São Paulo in the second year, and I'm a social and climate activist since 2019, when I co-founded Polluters Out Brazil, a field of my organization that is Polluters Out International, that calls about how we can address the climate crisis on the fossil fuel field into our education. So we try to bring information and conscience on our youth population, especially in the universities, about the issue. So talking about the climate manifesto in my country, this is not something that is current right now, sadly, and just a few people know. But we are having some progress in climate education here that is really exciting and new and not expected. Last year, we had the BNCC, that is like a common grade of the curricula for the higher education, the high school, in fact. And then in this plan that the government just launched, and we are having our first first high school course right now, like the first years today it's happening. We have some intersectional disciplines and subjects. So we have climate education into empreneurism. We have mathematics applied to biosystem and this kind of things. And it does that the students feel more connected to what they're learning. And I think that this is essential. This is something that we can see in the manifesto, and it's really smart because when you show someone something, it's pretty common that they just like forget or something like this. But when you do involve the student, they feel connected and they know how it does affect their lives. So we are trying, like the plan is to do this and then have more prepared people to go to higher education. Here in my country, just 3% of people go to the superior education. And that's something that is just a few people go, but it's pretty important that those people that go have a critic sense to see what is going on around them and act. And even if they don't go, they need to have the skills to deal with the modern world. And the climate crisis is basically the foundation of our nowadays. So we're having lots of changes and we are having lots of people suffering, and they need to understand why this is happening and how to act. Right now, we have a pretty big engagement from the higher education students, especially on UNI, that is the National Students Organization, calling for better studying universities and better studying and an education that really engage people. That's not something that just stay in the classroom. We need to go out of it and break these barriers. So right now we're having an interesting way of looking to things, and I'm pretty happy about it.
All right, so that's all from the speakers we have today. Yeah, so we wanted to move now into a bit more of an interactive part of the session today. And I would like to invite Jamie to just introduce the next part, where we're going to be looking at the ranking of higher education institutions, or the so-called league tables. So he'll give us a bit of a brief on why we should change those, how they work, and then we'll go into 3 breakouts to discuss more in detail about this. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, Tim. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that. So I work at SOS UK. The reason we want to discuss this with you is we've put a session proposal into COP27 to discuss with some of the chief execs of the leading educational league tables what they are doing to include climate change and sustainability in their own rankings. So when we say rankings, we're talking about things like the OECD's PISA. PISA is a sort of definition of what quality education is. Like many countries around the world use their ranking in the PISA league tables as a metric for quality, predominantly for secondary education. So PISA actually stands for the Programme for International Student Assessment. And it only really looks at mathematics, science, and reading skills. But it's defined, that is the definition of how good quality school education is, 15-year-olds, so secondary education. And then for universities, there's sort of 4 main league tables, one of which is the Times Higher World University Rankings. And again, there's nothing really in there about sustainability or climate. And we just heard from those amazing speakers about the importance of integrating quality climate education into what is taught at various different levels of education. So you would think a definition of, you would think the rankings for what is a great university in these global rankings would include something on climate and sustainability and how integrated that is into what's being taught. But that isn't the case. So they're ranked on things like teaching and research, how many citations they get, how much income they generate, and some of them include things like student satisfaction and also how much you earn as a graduate, of which none of that is really driving universities to change what they teach or how they teach it. It's more about where they publish articles or how they keep the students satisfied who are paying the tuition fees. So we think this is like a systems level opportunity. If you can change the global ranking systems for what is defined as quality education, then universities around the world, because it is a global marketplace for higher education, will change what they teach and how they teach it. And similarly, if you can change something like PISA, the quality rankings for secondary education, then governments around the world will change what is taught. Now, a few people have done some work on this, including UNESCO, who's another UN agency alongside OECD. But no, we haven't really got to where we need to get with it, which is why we've suggested there's a rankings roundtable at COP27. But ahead of that rankings roundtable, it'd be great to get everyone's reflections on why this is important. So assuming that meeting happens and we get the chief execs of all these organizations either on a live stream or in a room at COP, we can actually say young people thought this and are calling for this. So it'd be quite useful for you to help shape the way that rankings roundtable event at COP27 will be run. I should say as well, Times Higher have had a bit of pressure put on them. One of the main university league tables, Times Higher Education, their response was to come up with something called the impact rankings. The impact rankings look at how universities integrate the sustainable development goals into what is taught. The problem with that is it doesn't impact their main league tables, and it's optional as well. So it feels like some progress has been made in university rankings, or at least for Times Higher, but as yet it's not mainstream, and that is the problem. So at the moment, you could argue that some of the metrics for university league tables are actually making things worse for us, not better. Things like how much you earn as a graduate isn't really going to drive people towards working for high impact, sometimes not very well paid, not for profits, for example. And a lot of it is still around sort of the conventional ways of teaching, as we heard earlier, things like economics and politics, which again is kind of how we got in this mess in the first place, which is why we need to change it. Is that all right, Tim?
Yes, that's great. Thanks so much, Jamie. So we'll open up into 3 breakouts now and discuss the following questions that I just put into the chat. Who do you think are the main ranking organizations? What are the ranking organizations that you're all familiar with, maybe? What questions would you ask them if you would be talking to them at the COP? So representatives of those ranking organizations. And what would you like them to do, for instance, in terms of integrating climate education in their rankings? And what specifically could be metrics of quality climate education that should be in those league tables? So according to which criteria should they be assessed in the rankings? Yeah, so I'll open up the rooms now, and we'll have one host for each of the breakouts. Jamie will host one, I'll host one, and Ellie will host one. And it would be great if you could also take minutes of those discussions in the minutes document that I also post in the chat now. So you have 20 minutes in those breakouts, and yeah, have a good time. See you after that back in the main room, and then we'll hear from some of your insights. Hello, people. It would be great if you're able to share your video just to get a sense of who's in the room with us. Thanks for joining us today. And yeah, I wonder would somebody be willing to take some notes just of the main insights. Doesn't have to be every word. Can also capture some of that later.
Did you say that did you say Jamie was running one of the groups?
Yeah.
Is it possible to switch me in there? Because I have a question that I think only is going to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just working on it.
Appreciate it.
All right. So, are you guys familiar of any other or any what do you think are the main rankings or league tables?
I think it's mainly, as I mentioned, it's mainly relating to the investments that's happening in there. Like the rankings so far are ranking on what could gain more profits than what could gain more sustainability in terms of what we did explore today. Like for example, you have got top universities, but they don't have even the adequate enough information for students to get out of these universities ready to take climate action. They just promote on what you want to work for or the industry that you want to work for. So relating back to the industry that's investing in most of the top universities is a fossil fuel industry. So imagine these people getting out there, mostly gonna get into the fossil fuel industry anyway. So if we manage to link the divestment criteria with the rankings on sustainability, I think there is a direct link between those. And I will leave the room for the other people to speak.
Right. So I think you were voicing how the main rankings so far is focused on employability and sort of the more economic growth focus, right, and less on the climate. But are you actually aware of any rankings? Like Jamie mentioned, the Times Higher Ed ranking. Are there any other rankings maybe that are more in your countries that students are actually looking at when they are choosing which universities to go to? Mohab or anybody else? Okay, guess not. So if you would have the chance to speak to those ranking organizations, like the Times Higher Education ranking, for instance, what questions would you ask them, or what actions would you want them to do? Maybe Ben, are you with us? I see you're part of the Office of Sustainability. Maybe you have some insights on this.
Hey guys, Ben had to run out really fast, but I think he'll be back in a minute. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. I don't know, Saskia or Kelu, Adam.
I could answer to your question on a local level. The universities in Egypt are very low. Like in terms of the global ranking, it's very low. Even Times Higher or all these ranking tables, we're not even, I think, included in the BETA League because we're very low. So because the quality of education and the accessibility in Egypt is very complicated. So I would say on a global level, let's focus on the top ranking universities for say, because they are the main contributors or the main generation building place institutions for, let's say, the future of sustainability. If I had the chance to talk to these ranking leagues, I would say that we need to focus more on what connects the planet of the preservation of the planet, and what aids to really in sustainable development goals, what's really sustainable for the planet? Is it really sustainable to rank universities on competition, or competition in marks, as Shreya said, or on competition of what preserves the planet, what protects the planet from what's already facing, let's say, the climate crisis? So yeah, maybe this is a talking point.
Saskia, so you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think from my perspective, there are 3 different angles that could be taken in regards to sustainability at university that I would like to see. And to me, they're quite independent. I think 3 different ranking systems of sustainability at university is too much. But I think there are 3 distinct sort of things. One is how sustainable the actual university is. You know, we're talking renewable energy, green spaces, that kind of thing. The second being how they promote sustainability amongst the student body with, you know, like education, sustainable education, and promoting like sustainable housing and that kind of thing. And then the last, which I think is not talked about so much, is how they would empower students and employees to further sustainability. So rather than just saying, this is what we do, how do they, or rather than just, for example, teaching sustainability within the course, how do you then train people to become sort of active global citizens and take what they've learned and do something with it? So sort of more of an empowerment and support in implementing ideas.
Nice. Thanks so much. Yeah, Prince, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to talk from my bed because I'm a little bit not feeling fine. So if I have to say something to the people who are in charge of ranking, the first thing is the question I would like to ask them is how practical is the teaching related to what the students have to do in the field? Because in most time you speak to so many students, they will tell you what I am doing at the moment hasn't got anything to do with what I studied in school. It means in most time, those schools, those administrators, those governments, they focus a lot on achieving the top rank, like just to keep the name that this university is the best in the country. But in terms of the realities with what is happening in the ground, it's always 0. So if I had the opportunity to always ask those people who have to rank this, I'll be asking them this question: how is it related? How are the ranks related with the practicality on the field? How does your rank apply to what your students actually achieve in the field in terms of their commitment in the work they are doing, in terms of their keeping in line with what they learned in school? Yeah, everybody is talking about climate change just within the school buildings. When they go out, what happens? Are they conscious? Do they still remember that as climate actors, we need to be conscious about every action we take anywhere we go? Those are some of the questions we should be asking them. Are some of those policies being implemented because we just want to obtain climate credits? Like I was talking to a friend who was telling me, no, I'm just doing this project because if at the end of the day I can't make money from it, I'll still gain some money from climate credit. So these are the kind of questions, if I was chance to pose to those in charge of this, I will be posing to them. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, so I'm just gonna pick on people or bring people in who are raising their hands. So if you want to speak, just raise your hand as well. And Doye, you're next on my screen.
Yes, what I would like to ask if I had an opportunity to ask those that are in rankings, I would want to ask a question of how they would help or empower those that are doing, of course, activities that that impact or that cause climate change or increase in carbon emission, those that do activities that are of economic value. For example, in rural communities, you find that people do charcoal burning because charcoal burning is of economic value. What would you do to substitute that activity to the local community so that while they are aware of the dangers of such activities, then what is it that is going to replace their activities that they are doing? And then apart from that, while we are fighting climate change, climate mitigation, we look at the other potential causes of a climate change, which lead.
Sorry, Doya, I lost your connection there. Can you hear us, Doya? Pity, I think her connection might be a bit unstable. Maybe Adamu, I saw you posted some things in the chat. Would you also like to speak in audio, or is this okay if you prefer to just write in the chat? So he wrote that he thinks the process should be more of accountability and transparency with zero balance, and also the eco-friendly environment should be taken into consideration. His question is, what are the priorities taken into consideration? What support do they have in order to improve and change the scenario before the next ranking? Also, I will ask whether they consider the carbon footprint aspect. Okay, thanks for your contributions. Yeah, Ben, are you back with us, or otherwise Mohab, go ahead.
Yeah, coming from the country hosting the next COP, I have seen many forms of, let's say, tokenism and not efficient inclusion of views, because in universities, I'm not a university student, but what I get from university students when I talk with them, many people get the chance, or they are given the chance to get to these negotiation places without even learning in let's say higher ed institutions what's really happening in there. This relates back to the many greenwashing procedures. They take use in these places and they go accordingly to say what they want them to say, because this is what they learn. And this relates back to what we learn in university. I think Justin or someone mentioned that what actually are they learning? They're just learning that climate change is in here and in here, but they are not learning on the solutions. And there are many solutions everywhere, but in universities, we're not learning enough about the solutions. We're learning about how to gain profit from what's happening in the climate change. For example, when in our regions we're pressured by debt, university institutions focus on, especially in the economic side, to learn about how we lift this debt by investing more in the fossil fuel industry. But in universities, they don't get to learn the clear pictures that the fossil fuel industry is the main reason for what's happening. This is just a small example. So I would say that actually learning and reflecting on the negotiation process is a key part of them taking place in there, to be able to ask the right questions, let's say in negotiation places like COP, and learning what's really climate action, not just greenwashing, because it's very common nowadays and everywhere. And this is what I've seen. I'm a young advocate in Egypt, but it's the people who get the chances are actually people who don't understand it, what's really climate action. So I would say to change the rankings according to the adequacy of learning climate action, not just learnings of the disasters or the what's currently ongoing. To learn climate science, the university strengthening the learning of climate science, the university is strengthening the learning of solutions, rather than the learning of, let's say, economic stability or economic short-term benefits. Because in the long term, actually, the economy is also going to suffer if we keep going in that linear economy. And actually learning as well about the circular economy is a concept that's starting to get known in universities, but still it needs to be broadened. So yeah.
Right, thanks so much. Yeah, Prince, go ahead.
Yes, another thing I thought I should be able to ask these guys, we'll look at a typical example of the stakeholders in climate mitigation in the agricultural industry, because I'm coming from the agricultural industry. You bear with me that 60% of those people who are daily committed in like deforestation and many other things are the farmers. And you equally bear with me that in most of these discussions, these people are never involved, because research has proven that well over people will go to their farms at the age of 50 years when they are retired. And the most famous farmers you'll find, especially in Africa, are people who never went to school. That means if you bring them in a conference like this, they won't understand English, they won't understand French, they won't understand Spanish. Probably they'll speak their local language. And you'll find most of those farmers sitting on maybe 50 hectares, 100 hectares. They're cutting down the forest every day. Probably they're planting rice, they're planting cocoa, they're planting the many things we are talking about. And so if we really need to like rank issues of this magnitude, those people really need to be involved, because they are actively involved in all of these issues more than most of us sitting on the tables and taking the decisions. So I think sometimes if I hold the chance to pose the question to those who have the powers to make decisions on these issues, we should always consider this part of the ecosystem, because if we want to achieve a sustainable climate change discussion, those people need to be involved. Because if we keep having the discussions in conferences and they keep destroying the forest, they don't even know why they are destroying the forest. When I talk to some of them, they will tell me, this forest we are cutting down has never been inhabited by any human being. So probably the people in the West, the Europeans, they don't want us to destroy the forest because they have already exhausted their own forest. They don't have anything to hold on, but we still have our forest and it's giving us a lot of money. So why don't we destroy until it get to that time where we start feeling the climate impact, then you can allow us to fix it. So those are some issues that we need to bring. We need to have inclusive discussion. We need to get the real actors sit on the table and make those decisions. Thank you.
Well, thanks for highlighting that. I see Adamu also posted in the chat. I think the process should more focus on accountability and transparency. Okay, I think that was from earlier, sorry. And some institutions, most especially in my own region, don't give full support to students who have green ideas and innovation that will serve as solution to climate crisis. I will do as they consider the kind of idea and climate change innovations explored by university before rank. So I'm not sure if I got the main point here, but I guess it's about really supporting students to have more, to take more action and learn more about green ideas. Yeah, so we still have only okay, welcome back everybody. Sorry that I hope that end of the breakout was not too abrupt. A few people are still popping in. All right, I guess that's everyone back. Yeah, so it would be great to just hear from each breakout, maybe just some highlights. It doesn't have to be a summary of everything that you discussed, but maybe what felt like some of the most valuable things to share now in terms of recommendations for what should be in those rankings, things that you would want to tell those people who are involved with rankings. Maybe I'll start from breakout number 3 and then go back to 2 and 1.
That was us, was it, Tim?
So, yeah, maybe just go ahead. I'm not sure which one that was.
Okay, so we sense checked that the global rankings are relevant to various countries, and indeed they are. So it seems. There was a really interesting point around how we can ensure that the right education gets to people in the last mile, those that are affected by things like the climate emergency and ecological crisis, but also a good comment around not just being about outputs of the education system, which are things like knowledge, but actually outcomes, which is how you apply that knowledge, which I thought was a very valid point. And there was just some stuff around in the metrics around the practicalities of getting the right knowledge to the right, is relevant to the country. One of the problems I think with global ranking systems is that it's one size fits all. So that's something we can bring up at Rankings Roundtable as well.
All right, thanks so much. Anybody from breakout room number 2? Or yeah, not sure which one was which now.
Yeah, so for breakout group number 2, we talked mostly about how there's an emphasis on the education rather than the solutions associated with that education, and how the systems need to push for project-based solutions rather than this obsolete, or not obsolete, but this like vague idea and understanding of the climate crisis, both in like K through 12 education. So it sparks that interest before pursuing a degree. Otherwise, they're not going to pursue a degree. They're going to have no interest in it if they're not aware. And also incorporating climate awareness and climate solutions into non-traditional disciplines such as like chemistry and physics, to just inspire interest within the youth and to, again, like advocate for project-based solutions. That was really our main crux of our conversation. So
yeah, can I add a couple things?
Please.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this in the conversation, but I personally believe that I think climate can't be taught like other subjects for a variety of different reasons. One is, it can get political and controversial. Second of all, fossil fuel industry, the fossil fuel industry is notorious for trying to provoke disinformation in the education spaces wherever they can, from my understanding. And third, there's like the risk of the educators need to balance like teaching the solutions and explain the problem versus not going too far and provoking climate anxiety. And fourth, solving a crisis will depend on solutions across the board, and we need as many people part of those as possible. And so you need to keep engagement up, and you can't just teach it like any other subject where you just kind of do a few practice problems and read some textbooks and that's it. And I think the other thing, to add to Ellie's point, personally speaking, when she talked about how climate should be introduced at an early stage or age as much as possible, like I agree with that, and I can personally attest to that because I try to focus on climate as possible in my uni studies currently. But a few years ago, I was not in this position because, quite frankly, I didn't know that climate policy was a thing. And I feel like a lot of people are in that boat too, especially those who are just basically taught very little about the subject in high school or earlier. Like for me, it was like maybe 2 days of AP environmental science, and that was it. So definitely need to be a much higher priority in these spaces going forward.
Great, thanks so much. Would anybody still from breakout room number 1 highlight some of your main takeaways? I don't know, maybe Saskia would be up for that. Please.
Sorry, I didn't keep
No worries. Maybe some of the things
notes of that.
I can maybe say some of the things I heard was yeah, also really including the people who are maybe not directly or who never have the chance to go to higher education or education in general, like farmers in the agriculture system who are like reproducing harmful practices because they just don't know better or don't know other solutions or not aware of the impacts of those practices. So really including that these kind of views also in the discussions around changing the education system. And yeah, just really making sure that the rankings include not just learning about the disasters or the problems, but also the solutions and actions needed to take climate action. And yeah, the issue of letting go of short-term economic benefits that's so far steering a lot of the decisions in educational leadership, focusing on employability and economic growth. I guess that's a tricky one to let go of. Yeah, is anybody else who would still like to share some of your key insights and just a couple of keywords? Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up. All right, then let me just say a couple of things for closing. First of all, thank you so much for showing up today and sharing all your valuable insights and reflections, and really hope to keep the conversation going. Unfortunately, I'll be stepping out of organizing future activities, but Deborah and Evie and Ellie, who are also on the call today, will be organizing continued conversations in the future. And you're invited to also become part of ongoing Youth for Climate Education community. So I'll just say a little bit about this. So the idea is really to continue supporting youth to advocate both at local, but especially also at national and international levels for climate education. And one way you can stay connected is to sign up for a Google group, an email group, so you can stay in the loop with continued conversations such as the one on the 3rd of August. That's next week, Wednesday. I'll share the link in the chat as well. Yeah, and I'll just post a few more things in the chat so you can be aware of what we've been doing so far. Oops. Sorry, my laptop's making some strange things right now. Okay, there we go. Yes, so here's some links in the chat to where you can sign up to the Google group, as well as signing the Manifesto for Climate Education with the policy asks that we've been reflecting on so far. I'll send another message here with some links to recordings from the previous workshop we did in March, a roundtable event where we presented the asks to UNESCO commissioners. And we have a Discord platform as well if you want to continue the conversations in national groups, not just on the international level, but also with people in your countries. And there's a short video of like 5 minutes where we've asked youth from around the world what they think higher education is lacking and what leaders should do to act more on climate education. We'll also have some case studies on youth advocacy, similar to what we've heard before. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, but of all of these things, I just want to re-emphasize joining the Google group. That's the only way to stay in touch with what's going to happen on an ongoing basis. And so there was just a whole bunch of links that got put in there. But if you see at the beginning of the last set of links he just put in, it's the first one. So we don't want you to lose that, right?
I posted it again. So you have that. That was the last post.
Great. Thank you. And we hope to see you all there. Evie, Ellie, and I, and people from Fridays for the Future, Climate Education, and many other groups that have been working together, and we want to work with you in your groups as well. Just a big shout out to Tim for all his efforts. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was great working together with you also, Deborah, Evie, and Ellie. And yeah, any other closing words from anybody else? Deborah, Evie, Ellie.
Yeah, I could have a closing ceremony here. First of all, it's definitely the climate work is challenging and we face lots of issues, but stay optimistic, and we are in a better situation than we were in the last 2 years, and I believe that it's going to just get better. So let's try our best, and this is our only home, so we can't really lose it, and we have to always treat it as this. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to follow the link to the Google group, but it's not